They said compassion would kill you on the frontier. They were right. It almost killed me. But what nobody told me was that saving a dying monster would make me a queen. My name is Alara Quinn, and this is the story of how one reckless choice in the frozen woods changed everything. How a bleeding stranger became a king. How a tavern girl with nothing became the woman who tamed the untamable. If you want to know how a single act of kindness can shatter every rule you've ever known, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. Because this story, it doesn't go where you think. Let me take you back to the night it all began, the night I should have walked away. The wind that night carried the smell of blood. I should have turned back the moment I caught it. Metallic, thick, wrong. 3 years on the frontier had taught me that much. Blood in the forest after dark meant predators, and predators meant death. Simple math, the kind that kept you breathing. But I didn't turn back. The pine needles crunched under my boots as I pushed deeper into the tree line, my worn cloak doing nothing against the cold that knifed through the gaps in the fabric. My fingers were numb around the handle of my gathering basket, the wild herbs I'd spent the afternoon collecting now seeming like a foolish errand. Winter was coming fast to Thornhaven, and Madame Cress at the tavern had made it clear, no herbs, no pay. No pay, no room above the kitchen. No room meant the streets, and the streets in winter meant a shallow grave by spring. So I'd gone into the forest alone, even as the sun dropped low and painted the sky the color of a healing bruise. Now the sky was black, and I was following the scent of someone else's death. Stupid, I muttered, my breath fogging in front of me. Stupid, stupid, stupid. But my feet kept moving. The blood smell grew stronger. I rounded a massive oak, its roots thick as a man's torso, and stopped dead. There, crumpled against the base of the tree like a discarded marionette, was the largest man I had ever seen. No, not a man. Couldn't be. Men didn't come built like that. He was easily 7 feet tall, even folded in on himself, his shoulders broad enough to block out the moonlight. Dark hair fell across a face carved from stone, sharp jaw, brutal cheekbones, a nose that had been broken and healed crooked. His clothes were shredded, hanging off him in blood-soaked tatters that might have once been fine leather and linen, expensive. The kind of materials that didn't belong out here in the mud and the dying leaves. But it was the wounds that made my stomach turn. Deep gashes ran across his chest, his arms, his throat. Claw marks, I realized with creeping horror. 4 parallel gouges, each one wide enough to slip my finger into. The flesh around them was already dark, the edges blackened in a way that didn't look natural. Didn't look like any animal attack I'd ever seen. He was dying. Maybe already dead. I should have walked away. Every survival instinct I'd honed since my parents died screamed at me to turn around, go back to town, forget I'd ever seen this. Report it to the town guard in the morning if I felt charitable. Let them deal with whatever nightmare had torn this man apart. Instead, I knelt beside him. Hey. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. I cleared my throat and tried again, reaching out to touch his shoulder. Hey, can you hear me? His skin was furnace hot even through the remains of his shirt. Fever, infection, he had hours at most. Damn it. I sat back on my heels, looking around the dark forest as if an answer might materialize from the shadows. Nothing but trees and silence and the distant cry of a night bird. I looked back at the stranger. He was going to die out here, alone, torn apart by something I didn't want to imagine, left to bleed out in the cold like an animal. The wind picked up, and I pulled my cloak tighter. 3 years ago, I would have helped without thinking. 3 years ago, I still believed people were fundamentally good, that kindness mattered, that doing the right thing meant something. 3 years ago, my parents were still alive. The frontier had beaten that softness out of me one brutal lesson at a time. I'd learned to keep my head down, my mouth shut, my heart locked away where it couldn't get me killed. I'd learned that survival meant looking out for yourself, because nobody else would. I'd learned that compassion was a luxury I couldn't afford. The stranger's breath rattled in his chest, wet, labored, dying. "You're an idiot, Alara Quinn," I whispered. Then I grabbed him under the arms and pulled. He didn't budge. I tried again, leaning back with all my weight, my boots scrabbling for purchase in the loose soil. Nothing. It was like trying to move a boulder made of muscle and bad decisions. "Come on," I hissed through gritted teeth. Work with me here. On the third try, he shifted, just an inch, but it was something. I adjusted my grip, planted my feet, and hauled with everything I had. He moved another few inches. It took me 20 minutes to drag him 10 feet. By the time I'd gotten him halfway to the forest edge, my lungs were burning and my arms felt like they might fall off. Sweat soaked through my dress despite the cold, and I'd lost count of how many times I'd stumbled and nearly dropped him. "You better be worth this," I panted, stopping to catch my breath. "You better be someone important, a lord or a merchant or, I don't know, someone's beloved son who'll reward me handsomely for this stupidity." The stranger, predictably, didn't answer. I looked down at his face, now visible in the scattered moonlight filtering through the branches. Even unconscious and dying, there was something fierce about him, something that made my instincts scream danger, even as I was actively trying to save him. His features were too sharp, too predatory, the kind of face that belonged on old wanted posters or in fireside horror stories. "What happened to you?" I asked quietly. The wind was my only answer. I grabbed him again and kept pulling. Well, my cabin sat at the very edge of Thornhaven, where the town's carefully maintained roads gave way to wilderness. It wasn't much. One room, a packed dirt floor, walls chinked with moss and mud to keep out the worst of the wind. The roof leaked when it rained hard. The door didn't lock properly. The single window was more gap than glass. But it was mine. Or at least, it had been mine until Madame Crest decided I was behind on rent. 3 days, she'd told me that morning, her painted lips curling in distaste as she looked me over. "You have 3 days to pay what you owe, Quinn, or you're out. And don't think sleeping in the tavern storeroom is an option. I'll have the guards remove you myself." 3 days. 72 hours to come up with 2 months' worth of silver coins I didn't have. I shoved the thought aside as I finally managed to drag the stranger through my door. He was too big for my bed. His feet hung off the end even when I positioned him diagonally across the thin mattress. I stood there for a moment, hands on my hips, trying to figure out what to do next. Start with the bleeding, stop the bleeding, treat the wounds, deal with the fever. Simple. Except nothing about this was simple. I lit every candle I owned, turning the cabin into a flickering pool of warm light, then got to work stripping off what remained of his clothes. The fabric came away in pieces, so soaked with blood that it was impossible to tell what color it had originally been. Underneath, his body was a road map of violence. The claw marks were the worst, but they weren't the only damage. Bruises bloomed across his ribs in shades of purple and black. Burns marked his forearms, perfect circles, like he'd been branded. Old scars crisscrossed his back, some of them thick as rope. This man had lived a life of pain. I pushed the thought away and focused on the immediate problem, the wounds that were actively trying to kill him. I'd learned basic field medicine from my mother, who'd served as Thornhaven's healer before a winter fever took her. It wasn't much, enough to treat common injuries, set broken bones, mix poultices for infection. Frontier medicine. Desperate medicine. I heated water over my small fire, tore up my only spare dress for bandages, and gathered what herbs I had left. Yarrow for the bleeding, comfrey for the tissue damage, willow bark for the fever. Then I got to work. The wounds were deeper than they looked. I had to clean out bits of debris, splinters of wood, pine needles, something that looked disturbingly like pieces of bone, before I could even think about closing them. The stranger didn't wake, didn't flinch, didn't make a sound even when I had to dig my fingers into torn muscle to clear out the worst of it. Either he was unconscious beyond any hope of waking, or his pain tolerance was inhuman. I was betting on the former. "Stay with me," I murmured as I worked, even though he couldn't hear me. "Come on. Don't make me drag you all the way here just to die in my bed. That's a terrible way to repay me." The bleeding slowed as I packed the wounds with poultices and wrapped them tight with my makeshift bandages. Not perfect, but it would have to do. The fever was the next problem. His skin was so hot I could feel the heat radiating off him from inches away. I spent the next hour sponging him down with cool water, changing the cloth every few minutes as it warmed against his skin. Slowly, impossibly, his temperature began to drop. By the time the first light of dawn crept through my window, I was exhausted. I slumped in my chair, staring at the stranger who'd taken over my bed, my supplies, my life. "You better wake up," I told him. "You better wake up and explain what the hell happened to you, and then you better leave because I can't afford this. Any of this." He didn't respond. Outside, I could hear Thornhaven coming to life, the rattle of cartwheels on cobblestones, the shouts of early merchants setting up their stalls, the distant clang of the blacksmith's hammer. I needed to go to work. Madame Cress would dock my pay if I was late, and I needed every copper I could scrape together. But I couldn't leave him alone. Not yet. Not until I knew he'd survived the next few hours. I made my choice. I didn't go to work. 3 days passed in a blur of blood and water and sleepless vigilance. The stranger's wounds healed at a rate that should have been impossible. The deep gashes across his chest closed within 24 hours, the torn flesh knitting itself back together as if pulled by invisible threads. The burns on his arms faded to pink marks by the second day. By the third morning, most of the bruising had disappeared entirely. I told myself it was good medicine, good herbs, luck. I didn't let myself think about what it might actually mean. What I did think about was the cost. I burned through every herb I'd collected, every clean cloth I owned, every bit of firewood I'd stockpiled for winter. I didn't sleep more than an hour at a time, afraid that if I closed my eyes for too long, he'd stop breathing. And on the morning of the fourth day, Madame Cress showed up at my door. She didn't knock. She never did. The door slammed open, letting in a blast of cold air and the sour-faced tavern mistress herself. She was a tall woman, all hard angles and expensive fabrics. Her graying hair pulled back so tight it seemed to stretch her face into a permanent expression of displeasure. "Quinn," her voice could have stripped paint, "you haven't shown your face at the tavern in 3 days. 3 days of lost wages. 3 days of—" She stopped mid-sentence as her gaze landed on my bed, on the stranger. Her eyes went wide, then narrow. "What is this?" "He's injured." I stepped between her and the bed, which was ridiculous. She could see him perfectly well over my shoulder. "I'm treating him." "You're harboring him." She spat the word like a curse. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Bringing a strange man into your home, into my property?" "He was dying." "I don't care if he was dead and begging for resurrection." Madame Cress's face flushed an ugly red. "You live on my land, Quinn. Everything in this cabin belongs to me, including the bed that Vagrant is currently contaminating. I want him out. Now. He can't be moved yet. Another day and... Now." She pointed a bony finger at the door. "Or I'll have the guards do it, and while they're at it, they can remove you too. Consider this your final warning. You have until sunset to clear out, both of you." She turned on her heel and swept out, leaving the door hanging open. I stood frozen, staring at the empty doorway. Sunset. 6 hours? Maybe 7. I looked back at the stranger, still unconscious, still fighting whatever battle was happening inside his fever-racked body. He'd cost me everything. My job. My home. The last shreds of stability I'd managed to scrape together in this harsh place, and he didn't even know I existed. "Damn you," I whispered. "Damn you for making me care." I was packing my few possessions into a canvas sack when he finally woke. It happened so suddenly I almost didn't notice. One moment he was still as death, the next his eyes snapped open. They were gold, not amber, not hazel, pure molten gold, like coins held up to firelight. I froze, a wooden bowl halfway into my bag. We stared at each other. "You," he said. His voice was rough, unused, but there was a power in it that made the air feel heavy. "You saved me." It wasn't a question. I did. I set down the bowl carefully, moving slow, like he was a wild animal that might bolt. "How do you feel?" He pushed himself up to sitting, the blanket falling away from his chest. The bandages I'd wrapped around him were still in place, but underneath I could see the edges of wounds that had already sealed into pink scars. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. He looked down at himself, then at me. "How long?" 4 days? Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or concern. 4 days, and you stayed with me. Someone had to. Why? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean, why? You were dying. People die on the frontier every day. His gold eyes pinned me in place. Most wouldn't have risked it. Wouldn't have wasted their resources on a stranger. Why did you? I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. I don't know, I admitted finally. Stupidity, probably. For the first time, his expression shifted, something that might have been the ghost of a smile. Stupidity? Yes, that I believe. He stood, and I took an involuntary step back. He was even bigger standing up. He had to duck to avoid hitting his head on my low ceiling, and his shoulders nearly brushed both walls. The small cabin seemed to shrink around him, all the available space suddenly consumed by his presence. "What's your name?" he asked. "Alara Quinn." I lifted my chin, refusing to be intimidated in my own home. "And yours?" He hesitated, just for a second, but I caught it. "Kyle," he said. "Kale Draven." "Well, Kale Draven, you need to leave." I gestured at my half-packed bag. "We both do, actually. My landlady has decided harboring dying strangers is against her policies. We have until sunset." He looked around the cabin, taking in the peeling walls, the dirt floor, the single window with its cracked pane. "This is where you live." Was where I lived. Reading comprehension, Kyle. Try to keep up. This time, he definitely almost smiled. "You have somewhere to go?" "Not remotely, but I'll figure something out. I always do." I went back to my packing, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. "You should probably get moving too. Whatever tore you apart is still out there, and I'm guessing it'll come looking to finish the job." Silence. When I looked up, he was staring at me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "You saved my life," he said slowly, "at great personal cost. I made a choice. It was a bad one. Let's move on." "No." He took a step toward me, and I fought the urge to back away again. "You don't understand. In my world, a debt like this, a life debt, it matters. It binds." "I don't want to be bound to anyone," I shot back. "I want you to leave so I can salvage what's left of my life." "Your life," he repeated, something dark crossing his features. "The one you threw away to save mine. The job you lost. The home you're being evicted from. All because you chose compassion over survival." "Your point?" "My point is that I owe you." He reached into the tattered remains of his pants. How they were still on his body was a mystery, and pulled out a small leather pouch. He tossed it to me. I caught it reflexively. It was heavy. I opened it. Gold coins. At least 20 of them, maybe more. My breath stopped. "That's a start," Kael said. "For the debt I owe you. For your kindness." I stared at the coins, then at him. "I can't accept this." "You can. You will." He moved toward the door, somehow making the simple action look predatory. "Use it to secure your future, Alara Quinn. Buy yourself safety, and know that when I return, I intend to repay the full weight of what you've given me." "When you return?" I looked up sharply. "I don't want you to return. I want you to leave and never—" But he was already gone. I rushed to the door, looking out into the late afternoon light, but there was no sign of him. No footprints, no trace. Just the wind rustling through the pine trees and the distant sounds of Thornhaven going about its day. I looked down at the pouch of gold in my hands. It was enough to pay off my debt to Madame Cress, enough to rent a better place, enough to live comfortably for months, maybe a year if I was careful. It was a fortune, and I had no idea who or what I'd just accepted it from. Mom, I used the gold. Of course I used it. I wasn't actually stupid enough to throw away my one chance at survival out of principle. I paid Madame Cress what I owed her and told her I was leaving the tavern for good. The look of shock on her face was almost worth the 3 years of degradation I'd endured under her employ. I found a small house on the eastern edge of town. Nothing fancy, but the roof didn't leak and the windows actually closed and the door had a lock that worked. For the first time since my parents died, I had a home. A real home. But I couldn't enjoy it. Every night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about Kyle Draven. His impossible healing, his gold eyes. The way he'd moved. Like a predator. Like something that wore human skin but wasn't entirely human underneath. "When I return," he'd said. I told myself I didn't want him to. Told myself I'd done my good deed, taken my payment, and that was the end of it. We were even. But late at night, in the quiet hours before dawn, I'd catch myself listening for footsteps that never came. Weeks passed. Then a month. Then 2. Winter settled over Thornhaven like a burial shroud. Heavy snow, bitter cold, days so short it felt like the sun barely bothered to rise. I found work at the general store, stocking shelves and keeping inventory. It was boring, mindless work, but it paid enough to keep me fed and warm. I tried to forget about the stranger I'd saved. I almost succeeded. Then, on the coldest night of the year, he came back. I was walking home from the store, my breath fogging in the Arctic air, when I felt it, that prickling awareness that meant I wasn't alone. I stopped in the middle of the snow-covered street and turned around. Kyle Draven stood 10 feet behind me as if he'd materialized from the darkness itself. He looked different. Better. The wounds were completely gone, leaving no trace they'd ever existed. His clothes were new, fine black leather and dark wool, the kind of quality that spoke of serious money. His hair was trimmed, his jaw clean-shaven, but his eyes were the same. Gold, burning, fixed on me with an intensity that made my heart stutter. "Hello, Ilara," he said. I should have run. Every instinct I had screamed at me to run. Instead, I walked toward him. "You came back. I told you I would." "Why?" He smiled, a real smile this time, sharp and dangerous. "Because I'm not done repaying you, not even close." The gold was more than enough. The gold was nothing. He took a step closer. "What you gave me was worth more than any amount of money. You gave me my life, and now I'm going to give you a choice." The wind howled between the buildings, driving snow into my face. I wiped it away, not breaking eye contact. "What kind of choice?" "Come with me," Kyle said. "Leave this place. Let me show you who I really am, what your kindness has bound you to. And if I refuse, then I walk away, and you never see me again." His expression went serious. "But you'll always wonder. Wonder what you turned down. Wonder what might have been." He was right. I hated that he was right. I thought about my little house, my boring job, my safe, small, predictable life in Thornhaven. I thought about the moment in the forest when I'd made the choice to save him. The stupid, reckless, impossible choice that had changed everything. I thought about the fact that I'd spent 2 months pretending I didn't care whether he came back, when the truth was I'd been waiting for this moment since the day he left. "One condition," I heard myself say. Cale tilted his head, curious. "You tell me the truth about what you are, about what attacked you in that forest, about everything." For a long moment he didn't answer. Then he extended his hand. "Deal." I looked at his hand, large, scarred, steady. I thought about all the ways this could go wrong, all the ways I could end up hurt, or dead, or worse. I took his hand anyway. His skin was warm against mine, and the moment our palms touched, I felt it, a jolt of something that wasn't quite electricity, wasn't quite heat, something deeper, something that resonated in my bones. Cale's eyes widened slightly, like he felt it too. "What was that?" I whispered. "The bond," he said quietly, recognizing itself. "I don't understand." "You will." He squeezed my hand once, then let go. "Come. We have a long journey ahead, and I have a great deal to explain." He started walking, heading out of town toward the northern forest. I looked back at Thornhaven one last time, at the warm lights in the windows, the smoke rising from chimneys, the safe, predictable world I was leaving behind. Then I turned and followed Kyle Draven into the darkness. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt truly alive. We walked for hours through snow that came up to my knees. Kale moved through it like it wasn't there, his long strides eating up ground while I struggled to keep pace. He didn't slow down, didn't look back, just kept pushing forward into the forest with the certainty of someone who knew exactly where he was going. I was too proud to ask him to wait. By the time we stopped, my legs were burning and my lungs felt raw from breathing frozen air. We'd reached a clearing deep in the woods, far beyond anywhere I'd ever ventured. A small shelter stood in the center, barely more than 4 walls and a roof, but enough to block the wind. Cale pushed open the door and gestured for me to enter. Inside was sparse. A table, 2 chairs, a fireplace already stacked with wood. Someone had prepared this place. Recently. "Sit," Cale said, moving to light the fire. "Warm yourself. I sank into one of the chairs, my muscles trembling with exhaustion. How far are we from Thornhaven? Far enough. Flames caught in the kindling, casting dancing shadows across the walls. No one will find us here. We won't be disturbed. That should have worried me. Instead, I felt oddly calm. Kael settled into the chair across from me, the firelight turning his eyes into molten copper. For a long moment, he just studied me, his expression unreadable. You wanted the truth, he said finally. Are you certain you're ready for it? I walked away from everything I know to be here. I think I've earned it. He nodded slowly. Then I'll start at the beginning. But Ilara, once I tell you this, there's no going back. You'll carry this knowledge for the rest of your life. It will change how you see the world, how you see me. I understand. Do you? He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Because I don't think you do. Not yet. Then help me understand. Kael was quiet for a moment, choosing his words. When he spoke, his voice was low, almost hypnotic. There are things in this world that most humans never see. Things that live in the spaces between civilization and wilderness. We've learned to hide ourselves, to blend in, to let humanity believe they're alone at the top of the food chain. He paused. But we're not monsters. We're just different. Different how? Instead of answering, he stood. And then he changed. It happened so fast I almost missed it. One second he was a man, the next something else entirely. His body expanded, muscles rippling and reforming under his skin. His face elongated, jaw distending as his teeth grew into fangs. Dark fur erupted across his arms, his chest, his back. His hands became claws, each finger tipped with a curved talon the length of my thumb. When the transformation finished, the thing standing before me was no longer human. It was a wolf. But not like any wolf that existed in nature. This was bigger, more powerful, built like it could tear through stone and steel. Its eyes, those same gold eyes, fixed on me with an intelligence that was terrifyingly aware. I should have screamed, should have run. I sat frozen, my heart hammering against my ribs. The creature took a step toward me, and I flinched despite myself. It stopped immediately, lowering its massive head in what might have been apology? Then it began to shift back. The transformation reversed itself, fur receding, bones cracking and reshaping until Kael stood before me again. Human, breathing hard, watching my face with something that looked like fear. That's what I am, he said quietly. A Lycan, a shapeshifter. The thing parents tell their children about to keep them from wandering into the woods at night. My mouth had gone completely dry. You're real. The stories are real. Some of them. Most are exaggerated, but the core truth? He gestured at himself. Yes, we're real. I tried to process this, tried to fit it into my understanding of the world. Failed completely. The wounds, I heard myself say. In the forest. What did that to you? Kael's expression darkened. My enemies. There are those among my own kind who want me dead. They sent hunters, skilled ones. I barely escaped. Why do they want you dead? Because of what I am, who I am. He sat back down, holding my gaze. I'm not just a Lycan, Ilara. I'm the Alpha King. I rule the northern territories, everything from here to the frozen wastes. Thousands of my kind answer to me, bow to me. The words hit me like a physical blow. Alpha King. The legend whispered around campfires, the nightmare that frontier mothers invoked to scare their children into obedience. You're the monster from the stories, I whispered. Pain flashed across his face. Is that what you think? That I'm a monster? I don't know what to think. I stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. You're telling me you're some kind of king, of creatures that shouldn't exist, that I saved the most dangerous thing on the frontier and brought it into my home. You saved a man who was dying. You're not a man. I'm both. Kael rose to his full height, and suddenly the small shelter felt impossibly cramped. I'm Lycan and I'm human. I'm predator and I'm person. And yes, I'm dangerous to my enemies, but never to you. How can you promise that? You just showed me what you really are. I saw the claws, the teeth. How can you stand there and promise you won't? Because you saved my life! His voice cracked like thunder, and I stumbled back against the wall. Because when I was bleeding out in that forest, when my own people had abandoned me to die, you, a human girl with nothing, you gave up everything to keep me alive. Do you understand what that means? Do you understand the weight of that? I understand that I made a mistake. The words hung in the air between us. Kyle stared at me, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked genuinely hurt. A mistake, he repeated softly. Is that truly what you believe? I wanted to say yes. Wanted to throw it in his face and walk out of the shelter and somehow find my way back to Thornhaven and pretend none of this had ever happened. But I couldn't, because the truth was, even now, even knowing what he was, I didn't regret saving him. I sank back into my chair, suddenly exhausted. I don't know what I believe anymore. Kyle slowly sat down as well, the anger draining from his posture. For a while, neither of us spoke. The fire crackled. Wind howled outside. I told you there was a bond, he said finally. When you saved me, when you chose compassion over survival, you created something that my kind holds sacred, a life debt. It connects us, Alara, links our fates. I didn't ask for that. No one ever does. But it's there nonetheless. He leaned forward, urgent now. And here's what you need to understand. My enemies know about it. They know a human saved me. They'll come looking, not just for me, but for you. Ice slid down my spine. What? I had to leave you in Thornhaven to draw them away, to make them think you were nothing to me. But they're not fools. They'll investigate. They'll find out what you did. And when they do, they'll kill me. They'll try to use you against me. And failing that, yes, they'll kill you. I laughed, a sharp, broken sound. Perfect. So my choices are stay with you and be in constant danger, or go back home and be in constant danger. Outstanding options, Kyle. There's a third option. His voice dropped. Come with me to my territory, to my stronghold. Let me protect you properly. You'll be safe there, I swear it. Safe, I repeated flatly. Surrounded by creatures that could tear me apart without thinking twice. That sounds incredibly safe. My people follow my laws, and my law protects those I claim as mine. I'm not yours to claim. You're under my protection whether you accept it or not. The bond ensures that. He stood, moving to the window. But I won't force you. If you want to go back to Thornhaven, take your chances there, I'll let you. I'll even send guards to watch over you from a distance. But Alara, he turned back to face me. You can't unknow what you know now. You can't pretend the world is what you thought it was, and you can't escape the fact that saving my life made you a target. Those are the consequences of your kindness. I wanted to scream at him, wanted to rage at the unfairness of it all. Instead, I asked, what happened to you in the forest? Who attacked you? Kale's jaw tightened. Enemies from within my own ranks. Lycans who believe I've grown too soft, too willing to coexist with humans instead of dominating them. He moved back to his chair. They ambushed me during a border patrol. 15 trained warriors against 1. I killed 8 before they brought me down. You killed 8 people? I killed 8 traitors who were trying to murder their king. His eyes flashed gold. In my world, that's called justice. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the fire. This is insane, all of it. I know, but it's the truth you asked for. We sat in silence. I stared into the flames, trying to process everything I'd learned, trying to figure out what to do with information that had shattered my entire understanding of reality. If I go with you, I said slowly, to this stronghold of yours, what would that mean for me? It would mean safety, a place to live, resources, protection. He paused. And it would mean accepting the bond between us, publicly. What does that entail exactly? It means my people would know you saved me, that you hold a life debt over their alpha. It means you'd be under my direct protection, and harming you would be the same as attacking me. So I'd be, what? Your pet human? Your charity case? His eyes narrowed. You'd be an honored guest. Someone who risked everything for their king when his own people abandoned him. There's no higher status in Lycan society. I wanted to believe him, The problem was, I'd spent 3 years learning that people, and apparently creatures, rarely kept their promises. I need time to think, I said. We don't have time. My enemies could already be tracking us. Then you shouldn't have brought me here. I stood, anger flaring. You should have left me in Thornhaven, let me live my boring, safe, ignorant life. But no, you had to come back. Had to show me your truth. Had to drag me into your war. I came back because I owed you. You paid me. The gold was more than enough. The gold was nothing. Kale slammed his hand on the table, and the wood cracked under the impact. You gave me my life, Elara. You gave me hope when I thought I was finished. You cared for me when you had every reason not to. Money can't repay that. Nothing can fully repay that. His chest was heaving, and I realized with shock that his eyes were brighter than normal, almost like he was fighting back tears. Why does it matter so much to you? I asked quietly. Why do you care what happens to me? Because no one else does. The words came out raw. Because in 300 years of life, I've never met a human who looked at me, truly looked at me, and chose kindness. Everyone else sees the king, the predator, the weapon. You saw someone dying and you helped, just helped. No agenda, no fear, just pure stupid compassion. 300 years. The number rattled around in my skull. How old are you? I whispered. 347 this spring. I sat back down before my legs could give out. Kale watched me with those ancient gold eyes. Still think you made a mistake saving me? I think I'm in way over my head. That makes two of us. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. I've never had to explain my world to a human before. Never thought I'd need to. What changed? You did. You changed everything. The way he said it, with such absolute certainty, made something twist in my chest. I looked away, staring into the fire. I don't want to be responsible for changing anything. I just wanted to help someone who needed it. I know. That's exactly why you did. Outside, the wind had picked up. I could hear it screaming through the trees, driving snow against the walls. We should rest, Kyle said. It's a long journey to the stronghold. We leave at first light. I haven't agreed to go yet. You will. He stood, moving toward a pile of blankets in the corner. Because despite everything, you trust me. You wouldn't be here otherwise. I wanted to argue, wanted to prove him wrong, but as I accepted the blankets he offered and settled onto the floor near the fire, I realized he was right. I did trust him. Against all logic, against every survival instinct I possessed, I trusted this creature who could kill me without effort. Maybe that made me stupid. Or maybe, after 3 years of keeping everyone at arm's length, I was just desperate for a connection, any connection, with someone who actually gave a damn whether I lived or died. I dreamed of wolves that night. They surrounded me in the forest, their eyes glowing in the darkness. But they didn't attack. They just watched, waiting for something, waiting for me to choose. I woke to find Kyle already up, moving around the shelter with quiet efficiency. Dawn light filtered through the gaps in the walls, pale and cold. We need to move, he said when he noticed I was awake. The storm's passed, but it won't stay clear for long. I sat up, my body aching from sleeping on the hard floor. Where exactly is this stronghold? 3 days north, through the deep forest. 3 days? I rubbed my face. And what happens when we get there? You meet my people. They meet you, and we figure out how to keep you alive long enough to let this life debt settle. How long does that take? Depends. He tossed me what looked like dried meat and hard bread. Could be months. Could be years. There's no set timeline for this kind of bond. I stared at the food. You're telling me I could be stuck in your world for years? You're stuck in it regardless. At least in my stronghold, you'll have protection. He had a point, damn him. I ate mechanically, tasting nothing. My mind was racing through scenarios, trying to find a way out of this mess that didn't end with me dead in a ditch somewhere. What are your people going to think? I asked. About you bringing a human to your home. Kyle's expression went carefully neutral. They'll adjust. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have right now. He moved to the door, looking out at the snow-covered landscape. My people respect strength above all else. You saved their king when he was at his weakest. That counts for something. And if they decide it doesn't count for enough, he turned back to face me and his eyes were hard. Then they'll learn that challenging my decisions has consequences. The cold certainty in his voice sent a shiver down my spine. This was what he really was, I realized. Not just the man I'd saved, not just the creature who'd transformed in front of me, but a king. A ruler who'd held power for longer than I could comprehend, and I'd saved his life. The full weight of what I'd done was finally starting to sink in. I'm scared, I admitted quietly. Good. Fear keeps you alert, keeps you alive. He came back to stand in front of me. But Alara, I won't let anything happen to you. I swear it on my blood, my name, and my crown. You are under my protection, and I will die before I let anyone harm you. Why? The question burst out of me. Why does it matter so much? You barely know me. Because you're the first person in centuries who's given me hope that humans and Lycans can coexist, that we're not doomed to eternal conflict. His voice dropped. Because you saw a monster dying in the woods, and you helped anyway. That kind of courage is rare, worth protecting. I didn't know what to say to that. Kael seemed to sense my turmoil. He moved back to gathering supplies, giving me space. We leave in 10 minutes, he said. Pack light. It's going to be a hard trek. I stood, brushing off my clothes. I don't have anything to pack. Everything I own is back in Thornhaven. We'll get you new things at the stronghold. I don't want charity. It's not charity, it's necessity. Can't have you freezing to death before we get there. He glanced at me. Consider it part of my debt repayment. I thought the gold covered that. The gold covered your immediate needs. The debt itself? He shook his head. That's eternal, or close enough to it. Eternal. The word echoed in my mind. 10 minutes later, we set out into the frozen wilderness. The journey was brutal. We moved through terrain that would have killed me if I'd been alone. Steep ravines, frozen rivers, dense forest where the trees grew so close together I had to turn sideways to squeeze through. Kael navigated it all with the ease of someone who'd walked these paths 1,000 times before. I struggled to keep up. By midday, I was exhausted. My feet were numb, my hands were cracked and bleeding from grabbing onto frozen branches, and I was pretty sure I'd never be warm again. Kael finally called a halt in a small cave carved into the side of a cliff. Rest, he said. We'll stay here until you've recovered. I collapsed against the cave wall, too tired to even feel embarrassed by my weakness. Kael built a fire with wood he'd apparently stashed here previously. The man, creature, whatever, was nothing if not prepared. How much further? I asked once I could speak again. Another day and a half. Maybe less if the weather holds. And if your enemies find us before then? They won't. He settled across from me, the firelight casting sharp shadows across his features. I've covered our trail. And even if they did pick up our scent, they wouldn't dare attack this close to my territory. Why not? Because crossing into my lands without permission is an act of war. Even my enemies aren't that bold. He paused. Yet. The word hung ominously in the air. Tell me about them, I said. Your enemies. Who are they? What do they want? Kael was quiet for a long moment. Then, their leader is named Vardek. He's old, nearly as old as me, strong, cunning, and he believes Lycans should rule this world, not hide in the shadows. What does he want with you? My crown, my territory, my power. Kael's jaw tightened. He thinks I've grown weak, that my willingness to avoid conflict with humans makes me unfit to lead. He wants to take everything I've built and use it to start a war. A war with who? With humanity, all of it. He met my eyes. Vardek believes the only way for our kind to survive is to dominate yours, enslave you, make you cattle. Horror crawled up my throat. And the other Lycans? Do they agree with him? Some do. Maybe more than I'd like to admit. He ran a hand through his hair, suddenly looking very tired. It's been getting harder to maintain peace, harder to convince my people that coexistence is possible when humans hunt us, burn our forests, push further into our territories every year. So you're fighting a war on two fronts, against Vardek and against human expansion. More or less. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to process this. And where do I fit into all this, really? You're proof, Kael said quietly. Proof that humans can choose kindness over fear. That cooperation is possible. If my people see that, see you, maybe it'll be enough to turn the tide. To show them that Vardek's way isn't the only way. The weight of that expectation pressed down on me like a physical thing. That's too much, I whispered. I can't be responsible for preventing a war. I'm nobody, just a girl who made one stupid, impulsive decision. That stupid, impulsive decision saved the life of a king. Whether you accept it or not, you're part of this now, part of something bigger than either of us. I wanted to scream at him, wanted to rage against the unfairness of being thrust into a conflict I didn't understand, didn't ask for, didn't want. But exhaustion won out over anger. I need to sleep, I said instead. Kael nodded. Sleep. I'll keep watch. I lay down near the fire, using my cloak as a blanket. Despite everything, despite my fear and confusion and anger, sleep found me quickly. When I woke, it was dark outside the cave. The fire had burned low, casting everything in dim orange light. Kael sat exactly where he'd been before, perfectly still, staring into the flames. Did you sleep at all? I asked, my voice rough. I don't need as much sleep as humans. A few hours every few days is enough. I sat up, my body protesting every movement. That doesn't seem fair. Most things about being Lycan aren't fair. We live longer, heal faster, grow stronger. But we're also bound by things humans never have to worry about. The pull of the moon, the call of the pack, the constant struggle between our human minds and our wolf instincts. Is it hard? Maintaining control? Every day of my life. He finally looked at me. The beast is always there, Elara. Always hungry. Always wanting to break free and run wild. It takes constant discipline to keep it leashed. What happens if you lose control? People die. The words were flat, final. That's why leadership matters in our world. Why the strong rule. Because we need someone who can maintain control even when everything in us wants to give in to chaos. I shivered despite the fire's warmth. Come here, Kael said suddenly. What? You're cold, and we need to conserve body heat. Come here. Every rational part of my brain screamed that this was a terrible idea. I moved to sit beside him anyway. He wrapped one arm around me, and instantly I was surrounded by warmth. He ran hot, much hotter than any human, and it was like sitting next to a furnace. Better? He asked. Yes, I admitted grudgingly. We sat like that for a while, neither of us speaking. The wind howled outside, but in the cave we were safe, warm, protected. Why did you really come back for me? I asked quietly. The truth this time. Kael was silent for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because I'm 347 years old and I've never met anyone like you. Because you make me believe that maybe, just maybe, there's hope for a better future. Because when I look at you, I don't see prey or an enemy or a resource to be exploited. I see someone worth saving. His words settled into my chest, warm and terrifying. I'm not special, I whispered. You're wrong. His arm tightened around me slightly. You're the most special person I've ever met. And I've met thousands. I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. Eventually, I dozed off again, lulled by the warmth and the steady rhythm of Kael's breathing. When I woke the next morning, he was already up and preparing to leave. Final stretch, he said when he saw me stirring. By nightfall, you'll see my home. I stood, working the stiffness out of my muscles. And then what? Then we face whatever comes next, together. Together. The word echoed strangely in my ears. I'd been alone for 3 years, relying on no one, trusting no one, surviving by my wits and my will to live. Now I was walking into the den of the most dangerous creatures on the frontier, with only the protection of a king I barely knew and a bond I didn't understand. It should have terrified me. Instead, as we set out into the pale morning light, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Hope. We reached the edge of Kael's territory just as the sun began to set. I didn't realize we'd crossed the border until Kael stopped suddenly, his head tilting as if listening to something I couldn't hear. They know we're here, he said. Who? My border guards. They've caught our scent. He glanced at me. Stay close. Don't speak unless I give you permission. And whatever you do, don't show fear. That's asking a lot. I know, but it's necessary. Weakness invites challenge in my world. Before I could respond, they emerged from the trees. 6 of them, all massive, all moving with the same predatory grace as Kael. Their eyes gleamed in the dying light, gold, silver, amber. They formed a loose circle around us, and I fought the urge to move closer to Kael. Don't show fear. Right. One of them stepped forward, a woman with silver eyes and scars across her face. She was tall, muscular, with the kind of presence that demanded attention. My king, she said, dropping to one knee. You've returned. Rise, Mira. Kael's voice had changed, taken on a deeper tone, more commanding. I bring a guest. She is under my protection. Pass the word. Anyone who harms her answers to me personally. Mira's eyes flicked to me, assessing. I met her gaze, refusing to look away even though every instinct screamed at me to submit. A human, Mira said slowly. My lord, the council will accept my decision, as will you. Steel threaded through Kael's words. This human saved my life when I was left to die by traitors within our own ranks. She is owed a debt. She will be treated with the respect due to one who holds the life of the Alpha King in her hands. Silence. The other guards exchanged glances I couldn't read. Finally, Mira nodded. As you command, my king. Good. Now escort us to the stronghold, and send word ahead. I want the council assembled when we arrive. The guards fell into formation around us, and we began to move deeper into the territory. I leaned closer to Kael. What just happened? I claimed you publicly, he murmured. There's no going back now. You're mine to protect, and they're bound by honor to respect that. Yours, I repeated. I don't belong to anyone. Semantics. In their eyes, you're under my authority, which means you're safe. He paused. Mostly. Mostly? There will be challenges, tests. Some of my people won't accept you easily, but as long as you're strong, as long as you show you deserve to be here, you'll survive. Survive. Not thrive. Not prosper. Just survive. I was beginning to understand exactly what I'd walked into. We walked for another hour, the forest growing denser around us. Then suddenly, it opened up, and I saw it. The stronghold. It wasn't what I expected. Instead of a castle or fortress, it was a village. Dozens of structures built into the trees and carved into the cliffs, all connected by bridges and walkways that seemed to defy gravity. Lights glowed from windows, smoke rose from chimneys. I could hear voices, laughter, the sounds of life. It was beautiful, wild and fierce, and utterly unlike anything in the human world. Welcome, Kael said quietly, to Ravencrest, the heart of the Northern Territories. As we descended toward the village, figures began to emerge. More Lycans, all of them stopping to stare at the human walking beside their king. I felt the weight of every gaze, felt them judging, assessing, deciding whether I was worth the protection Kael had offered. This was it, the point of no return. I lifted my chin and walked forward, matching Kael's stride. If they wanted to see strength, I'd show them strength, even if I was terrified out of my mind. The council chamber was carved directly into the mountain, its walls rough stone polished smooth by centuries of use. Torches blazed in iron brackets, casting dancing shadows across the faces of the 7 Lycans seated in a semicircle before us. 7 pairs of eyes, gold, silver, amber, green, all fixed on me with varying degrees of hostility. I stood beside Kael in the center of the chamber, acutely aware that I was the only human in a room full of apex predators. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my face neutral, my spine straight. Don't show fear. You bring a human before this council. The speaker was a massive male with gray-streaked hair and eyes like chips of amber ice. Explain yourself, Alpha. Her name is Alara Quinn, Kael said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. She saved my life when I was ambushed by Vardek's forces. She is owed a life debt, and she is under my protection. That is all the explanation required. That is insufficient. A woman with jet black hair and silver eyes leaned forward. We are at war, my king. Bringing a human into our stronghold, into the very heart of our territory, is a security risk we cannot afford. Counselor Rhea raises a valid concern, another voice chimed in. How do we know this human isn't a spy? That she wasn't planted by Vardek himself to gain access to our home? I couldn't stay silent anymore. I was working in a tavern when I found him. I didn't even know what he was until 3 days ago. How exactly would I have time to become a spy? The chamber went dead silent. Kale's hand found my arm, a subtle warning, but it was too late. The gray-haired counselor stood, and suddenly he was much larger, his body rippling with barely contained power. You speak without permission in this chamber, human. You dare— Counselor Draven, Kale's voice cracked like a whip. She speaks because I allow it, and you will sit down before I remind you what happens to those who challenge my authority. The tension in the room ratcheted up to a breaking point. For a long moment, Draven and Kale stared at each other, and I could feel the power crackling between them like a physical thing. Finally, Draven sat. But the hatred in his eyes when he looked at me hadn't diminished one bit. The human stays, Kale said flatly. That is my decision as your alpha. If any of you take issue with it, you're welcome to challenge me. Here. Now. No one moved. Good. Then this council is dismissed. Mira will show Miss Quinn to her quarters. Kale turned to leave, then paused. And spread the word. Anyone who harms her answers to me, personally. He walked out without waiting for a response. The counselors filed out one by one, each of them giving me looks that ranged from curiosity to outright malice. Only the black-haired woman, Rhea, paused beside me. He's risking everything for you, she said quietly. I hope you're worth it. Then she was gone too. I stood alone in the chamber, my legs trembling with the adrenaline crash, until Mira appeared in the doorway. Come, she said curtly. I'll show you where you'll be staying. The room Mira led me to was small but comfortable, a space carved into the cliff face with a bed, a table, a chair, and a window that overlooked the valley below. It was better than anywhere I'd lived in years. Food will be brought to you, Mira said from the doorway. Don't leave this room unless the Alpha sends for you, and don't wander the stronghold alone. Not everyone shares our king's generosity toward humans. Understood. She started to leave, then stopped. Why did you do it? Save him? I looked at her, trying to read her expression. Because he was dying. That's not a reason. That's instinct. Humans don't risk themselves for strangers without cause. Maybe I'm different. Mira's eyes narrowed. Yes, maybe you are. The question is whether that difference will get you killed or make you stronger. She stepped back into the hallway. For your sake, I hope it's the latter. The door closed, and I was alone. I sank onto the bed, my entire body shaking now that there was no one to see it. The council. The way they'd looked at me. Like I was prey. Like I was an insult to everything they believed in. Kale had protected me. But for how long? How long before his people's hatred outweighed his authority? A knock at the door startled me. Come in, I called, expecting to see someone bringing food. Instead, Kyle entered. He looked exhausted, the weight of leadership visible in every line of his body. He closed the door behind him and leaned against it. That could have gone better, he said. Could have gone worse, too. No one tried to kill me. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. The day is young. That's not funny. Wasn't meant to be. He moved to the window, staring out at the darkening valley. Draven was right about one thing. Bringing you here is a risk. My people are on edge. Vardek has been pushing into our territory, testing our defenses. There have been skirmishes, deaths. They're looking for someone to blame, and you're an easy target. So send me back. Give me enough gold to disappear somewhere far from here, and we both walk away. Can't do that. Why not? He turned to face me. Because the moment I showed you to my council, I made you a symbol of my authority, of my decisions. If I send you away now, it looks like weakness, like I'm backing down. And weakness in an alpha is blood in the water. It invites challenge. I stood, anger flaring. So I'm stuck here because of your pride? Because you can't admit you made a mistake? You're stuck here because the alternative is worse. His eyes flashed gold. Vardek knows about you by now. His spies are everywhere. If you leave my protection, you're dead within a week. At least here, you have a chance. Some chance. Surrounded by people who hate me, waiting for one of them to decide your protection isn't worth respecting. Then prove them wrong. I stared at him. What? Prove them wrong. Show them you're not weak, not a liability. Show them why I chose to protect you. He took a step toward me. In 3 days, we hold the spring trials. Tests of strength, cunning, strategy. Lycans from across the territory come to compete, to prove their worth. Participate. Show my people what you're made of. I'm human, Kael. I can't compete with creatures who can tear trees out of the ground. Not in physical strength, no. But there are other tests. Tactical challenges, survival scenarios, things that require brains over brawn. His eyes held mine. I've seen what you can do, Alara. I've seen your determination, your resilience. You survived 3 years on the frontier alone. You saved my life when anyone with sense would have walked away. You have what it takes. And if I fail, if I embarrass you in front of your people, then at least you went down fighting, and that's something they'll respect. He moved closer, until he was just inches away. I'm not asking you to win. I'm asking you to try. To show them that the human their alpha chose to protect has a spine. I wanted to say no. Wanted to refuse to be his political pawn, his symbol, his proof of concept. But he was right about one thing. I'd rather go down fighting than hide in this room waiting for someone to decide I wasn't worth keeping alive. Fine, I said. I'll do it, but on one condition. Name it. You train me. If I'm going into this, I'm not going in blind. You teach me what I need to know. Kael smiled, a real smile this time, fierce and proud. Deal. We start tomorrow at dawn. Dawn came too early. I woke to Kael pounding on my door, the sky outside still dark with only the barest hint of gray on the horizon. Up, he called. We're losing daylight. It's still dark. Exactly. We have a lot of ground to cover. I dragged myself out of bed, every muscle in my body protesting. The journey here had taken its toll, and I was still recovering. Kael didn't care. He led me down through the stronghold, past Lycans who stopped to stare at the human following their king. We emerged into a training ground carved into a natural amphitheater in the rock, a wide, flat space surrounded by tiered seating. Several Lycans were already there, going through combat drills that made my stomach drop. They moved with inhuman speed and strength, their practice weapons cracking against each other with sounds like thunder. Don't worry, Kael said, catching my expression. You won't be doing any of that. Small mercies. He led me to the far side of the training ground, where a series of obstacles had been set up. Walls, ropes, platforms, gaps that needed to be jumped. This is the tactical course, he explained. It tests speed, agility, problem solving. Physical strength helps, but it's not everything. Lighter competitors have an advantage. Lighter like humans? Exactly. I studied the course, my mind already working through possible approaches. What's the record time? 4 minutes, 32 seconds. Held by Mira. The woman from last night? The same. She's my best scout. Fast, smart, adaptable. He gestured at the course. Try it. See what you can do. I approached the first obstacle, a wall about 10 feet high with handholds carved into the stone. I'd never been much of a climber, but I'd spent 3 years hauling supplies, chopping wood, doing the kind of physical labor that built functional strength. I jumped, grabbed the first handhold, pulled myself up. It was harder than it looked. By the time I reached the top and dropped down the other side, my arms were shaking. The next obstacle was a rope bridge suspended over a gap. It swayed under my weight, and I had to move slowly, carefully, fighting my fear of heights. Then came a series of platforms at different heights that required precise jumps. Then a crawl through a narrow tunnel. Then a climbing rope. Then I fell. My foot slipped on a wet platform, and suddenly I was in free fall. I hit the ground hard, the impact driving the air from my lungs. Kael was there instantly, kneeling beside me. Are you hurt? Just my pride, I gasped, trying to breathe. Get up, try again. I stared at him. I just fell 15 feet. And you survived, so get up and try again. There was no sympathy in his voice, no coddling, just expectation. I got up, I tried again, and again, and again. By the time the sun was fully up, I was covered in bruises, my hands were bleeding, and I'd completed the course exactly 0 times. But I was getting better. Learning the rhythm, the techniques, the ways to use momentum instead of fighting it. Enough, Kyle finally said. Come. We moved to the next phase. I followed him to a different area where several Lycans were engaged in what looked like a strategic board game, moving pieces across a map while others called out commands. Tactical scenarios, Kyle explained. We simulate battles, supply runs, defensive positions. It tests your ability to think under pressure, to adapt to changing circumstances. He introduced me to a lean male with green eyes who apparently ran these exercises. His name was Torin, and he looked at me with open skepticism. A human wants to participate in the trials, he said. She does, Kyle confirmed. Set up a scenario for her, something appropriate for a beginner. Torin's smile was not kind. Of course, my king. The scenario he set up was anything but appropriate for a beginner. He put me in command of a small unit tasked with retrieving supplies from a hostile area while avoiding detection by a much larger enemy force. On paper, it sounded simple. In practice, it was a nightmare. Every decision I made had consequences. Moved too fast and I triggered alarms. Moved too slow and the enemy closed in. Split my forces and they got picked off. Keep them together and they were easier to spot. I failed the scenario 5 times before I started to see the pattern. On the 6th attempt, I changed tactics completely. Instead of trying to avoid the enemy, I created a diversion, sent a small team to draw their attention while the bulk of my forces slipped through the gap. It worked. Torin stared at the board, then at me. Unorthodox, he said slowly, but effective. You think like a survivor, not a soldier. Is that good or bad? Depends on the situation. He reset the board. Again. This time, the scenario is different. We went for hours. Scenario after scenario, each one more complex than the last. My head was spinning, my brain exhausted from the constant problem solving. But I was learning. When Kyle finally called a halt, the sun was setting. You did well, he said as we walked back toward my quarters. I failed most of them. But you learned from each failure. That's what matters. He paused. The trials are in 2 days. You won't be ready, not fully, but you'll be ready enough. Ready enough for what? To not completely humiliate myself. Ready enough to survive. His expression was serious, because that's what this is really about, Ilara. Not winning, not impressing anyone, just surviving long enough to prove you deserve to be here. We'd reached my door. I turned to face him. Why do you care so much? I asked. Really, the life debt, the bond, the politics, I understand all that. But there's something else, something you're not telling me. Kyle was quiet for a long moment. Then, in 300 years, I've built an empire on strength and fear. I've done what was necessary to keep my people safe, even when it cost me my humanity. But you remind me that strength isn't just about power, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is show compassion when the world tells you it's weakness. He reached out, and for a moment I thought he might touch my face. Instead, he dropped his hand. Get some rest, he said. Tomorrow, we train harder. But the next day was worse than the first. Kyle pushed me until I thought I might break. The obstacle course, the tactical scenarios. Then something new, wilderness survival training, where I had to identify edible plants, build shelter, start a fire without tools. I collapsed into bed that night and didn't wake until Kyle was pounding on my door again the next morning. Today's the day, he called. The trials begin at noon. My stomach dropped. I dragged myself up, washed in the basin of cold water that had been left in my room, and dressed in the clothes someone had provided, sturdy pants, a fitted shirt, boots that actually fit. All of it in dark colors that wouldn't show dirt or blood. Practical. Designed for survival. Kyle met me outside, and together we walked to the amphitheater. It was already packed with Lycans. Hundreds of them, filling the tiered seating, their voices creating a roar that echoed off the stone walls. In the center of the arena, competitors were gathering, at least 30 of them, all Lycan, all significantly larger and stronger than me. And then there was me, the only human. The crowd noticed. The roar died down to whispers, then to hostile silence. "Ignore them," Kael murmured. "Focus on the trials." A horn sounded, and the crowd fell silent. Kael stepped forward, his voice carrying across the amphitheater. "The spring trials begin. As tradition dictates, any member of our people may compete, regardless of rank or station. The trials will test strength, cunning, and survival. Those who prove themselves will earn honor and respect." He paused, and his eyes found mine. "This year, we have an unusual competitor, a human who holds a life debt over your alpha. She competes not as Lycan, but as the one who saved my life. You will treat her with the same respect you would any competitor." Silence. Then from somewhere in the crowd, "If she survives!" Laughter rippled through the assembled Lycans. Kael's expression went hard. "Then let us see who survives. Let the trials begin." The first trial was the obstacle course I'd been training on. I'd managed to complete it once yesterday, with a time of just over 8 minutes. Embarrassingly slow compared to the Lycan competitors, but at least I'd finished. Now standing at the starting line with 20 others, I felt my confidence waver. The horn sounded. The Lycans exploded forward with inhuman speed, scaling the first wall in seconds, racing across the rope bridge like it was solid ground. I ran. I wasn't fast like them, wasn't strong like them, but I knew this course now, knew where to put my hands, where to step, where to use momentum instead of fighting it. By the time I reached the halfway point, half the competitors had already finished. I kept going. My hands were bleeding again by the time I reached the climbing rope. My arms screamed in protest as I hauled myself up, but I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. I crossed the finish line to scattered, mocking applause. 18th place out of 21 competitors. "Better than last," Kael said quietly from the sidelines. It wasn't enough. I could see it in the faces of the watching Lycans, see the contempt, the dismissal. The human is weak. The human doesn't belong. The second trial was the tactical scenario. This one was public, projected onto a massive board so the crowd could watch. Each competitor was given the same scenario: defend a position against overwhelming odds. The Lycans went first, most of them choosing straightforward strategies. Meet force with force, hold the line, fight until the end. Then it was my turn. I studied the board, my mind racing. The scenario was designed to be unwinnable through direct confrontation. The enemy force was too large, too strong. But there was another way. Instead of defending the position, I abandoned it, drew the enemy forces into a narrow canyon where their numbers would be a disadvantage, then collapsed the canyon entrance behind them, trapped them. The crowd went silent. Torin, who was judging this trial, stared at the board. "The objective was to defend the position," he said slowly. "The objective was to survive," I countered. "The position was indefensible, so I changed the battlefield." More silence. Then Torin smiled. "Unconventional, but tactically sound. I award this round to the human." Shock rippled through the crowd. I'd won. I'd actually won. But the looks I was getting from the other competitors weren't respect. They were fury. The third trial was wilderness survival. We were each given a pack with minimal supplies and sent into the forest. The goal? Survive 24 hours and make it back to a designated extraction point. Simple. Except the forest was full of predators, and the other competitors weren't above sabotage. I made it 3 hours before I ran into trouble. I was gathering firewood when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned to find 3 Lycan competitors blocking my path. One of them was Draven's son. I recognized him from the council chamber. His eyes were the same cold amber as his father's. "You don't belong here, human," he said. "The Alpha invited me to compete. Take it up with him." "We're taking it up with you?" He took a step forward. "Out here, there are no witnesses. No one to protect you, just you and us." My heart was hammering, but I kept my voice steady. "You really want to risk your king's wrath over this?" "Our king is weak, blinded by some misguided sense of honor." Another step. "We're going to show him what happens when humans are allowed into our world." They began to shift, not fully, but enough. Claws extending, teeth lengthening, eyes blazing with predatory light. I ran. I crashed through the underbrush, branches tearing at my clothes and skin. Behind me, I could hear them laughing as they gave chase. They were playing with me. They could catch me anytime they wanted. I needed to change the rules. I spotted a stream ahead and veered toward it, splashing through the shallow water. Downstream, I remembered seeing a steep drop-off during the training runs Kael had taken me on. I just had to get there before they got bored of the chase. The waterfall appeared ahead, a 30-foot drop into a pool below. I didn't hesitate. I jumped. The fall seemed to last forever. Then I hit the water hard, the impact driving the air from my lungs. I kicked for the surface, broke through gasping. Behind me, I heard snarls of frustration. They wouldn't follow. The jump was too risky even for Lycans. A wrong landing could mean broken bones, and that would mean failure in the trials. I'd won this round. I dragged myself out of the pool and kept moving, putting as much distance between myself and my pursuers as possible. By the time the 24 hours were up, I was exhausted, hypothermic, and covered in cuts and bruises. But I made it to the extraction point. Only 12 of the original competitors were there. The rest had either quit or been eliminated. And I was one of the 12. The final trial was announced that evening. Single combat. Not to the death, but to submission or unconsciousness. The 12 remaining competitors would be paired randomly, and the winners would advance. My stomach sank. I couldn't beat a Lycan in single combat. I'd barely survived being chased by 3 of them. The pairings were announced. My opponent, a female named Kira, smaller than most Lycans, but still significantly larger and stronger than me. We faced each other in the arena as the crowd roared around us. "I'll make this quick," Kira said. "You don't belong here." She rushed me. I dove to the side, barely avoiding her claws. She was fast, but I was smaller, more agile. I couldn't beat her with strength, but maybe I could outlast her. I spent the next 5 minutes doing everything I could to avoid direct contact. Dodging, rolling, using the terrain of the arena to create obstacles between us. Kira grew frustrated, sloppy. She lunged, overextended. I saw my opening. I dropped low, swept her legs out from under her, and used her own momentum to send her crashing to the ground. Before she could recover, I was on her back, my arm around her throat in a chokehold I'd seen other competitors use. "Submit!" I hissed in her ear. She tried to throw me off, but I held on, tightening my grip. "Submit!" Finally, furiously, she tapped the ground. The crowd went silent. I'd won. I'd beaten a Lycan in single combat. I released Kira and stood on shaking legs. Around me, hundreds of Lycans stared in shock. Then someone started to clap. Slowly, others joined in. Not everyone, probably not even half. But enough. Enough to matter. I looked up to where Kael sat with the council. He was smiling, pride written clearly across his face, but Draven beside him looked like he wanted to kill me where I stood. That night there was a feast to celebrate the trials. I sat beside Kael at the high table, acutely aware that I was the only human in a hall full of Lycans. Some of them nodded to me with grudging respect. Others glared with unconcealed hatred. I was halfway through my meal when the doors burst open. A Lycan scout stumbled in, covered in blood. "Vardek," he gasped. "Vardek's forces have breached the western border. They're coming, hundreds of them." The hall erupted into chaos. Kael was on his feet instantly, already issuing orders. "Mira, mobilize the border defenses. Torin, get our civilians to the shelters. Rhea." "My king!" The scout grabbed Kael's arm. "There's more. They have a human with them. A woman. She's telling them where to strike, how to breach our defenses. She knows everything about our stronghold." Ice flooded my veins. "What woman?" Kael demanded. The scout met my eyes. "She says her name is Quinn, says she's the sister of the human you're harboring." The entire hall turned to stare at me. "I don't have a sister," I whispered. But even as I said it, a terrible certainty was forming in my gut. I hadn't thought about her in 3 years. Hadn't wanted to. My mother's sister's daughter, who'd disappeared into the frontier before my parents died. The cousin who'd always been cruel, who'd blamed me when her mother died because I'd been born and survived when my aunt hadn't. Emma. "She's lying," I said, louder now. "I don't know anyone named Emma Quinn. I don't—" "She knows details about you," the scout interrupted. "About Thornhaven, about the tavern, about everything I would have told people during 3 years of living there." I shot to my feet. This is a trap. Vardek is using my past against me. Or, Draven said coldly, rising from his seat, this human has been playing us all along, spying for Vardek, feeding him information. That's insane. I didn't even know Lycans existed until our king conveniently needed saving. Draven's voice dripped venom. How convenient that you found him, that you knew exactly how to treat wounds that should have killed him, that you've been learning our defenses, our strategies, our weaknesses. Enough! Kale's roar silenced the hall. Alara is not a spy. This is Vardek's manipulation, nothing more. Then let her prove it, Draven shot back. Let her go to the western border. If this woman claiming to be her sister is lying, she can expose the deception. And if she's telling the truth, he smiled coldly, then we'll know exactly what this human is worth. The hall erupted in agreement. Kyle's jaw was tight. Absolutely not. I won't send her into I'll go, I said. Everyone turned to stare at me. I'll go, I repeated, meeting Kyle's eyes. I'll prove this is a lie. That I'm not a spy. My voice cracked. That I'm worth the protection you've given me. Alara, no, this is exactly what Vardek wants. He's trying to draw you out, to prove I'm a traitor? Fine. Then I'll prove I'm not. I stood tall despite my fear. I'm going to the western border, with or without your permission. For a long moment, Kyle just stared at me. Then he nodded, and I saw the pain in his eyes. Then I'm going with you, he said, and if this is a trap, we face it together. We rode through the night, 30 warriors at our backs and vengeance in our hearts. Kale had shifted to his Lycan form to cover ground faster, and I clung to his back as he ran, his powerful muscles bunching and releasing with each massive stride. The forest blurred past us, and the cold wind brought tears to my eyes that had nothing to do with emotion. Behind us, Mira and her scouts kept pace, their forms flickering between human and wolf as they navigated the treacherous terrain. I could hear them communicating in growls and barks that I was beginning to understand. Warnings of obstacles ahead, confirmations of our route, questions about our strategy. We were moving into a war zone, and everyone knew it. Everyone except possibly me. How much further? I shouted over the wind. Kyle's response was a rumbling growl that I interpreted as close. He'd been silent since we left the stronghold, his body tense with barely contained rage. Whether that rage was directed at Vardek or at me for volunteering for the suicide mission, I couldn't tell. Maybe both. The western border appeared as a line of cliffs that dropped away into a narrow valley. Kale slowed as we approached, his massive form dropping into a crouch. The others spread out around us, forming a defensive perimeter. I slid off his back, my legs trembling from the hours-long ride. Kyle shifted back to human form, his eyes scanning the valley below. There, Mira said quietly, pointing. I followed her gesture and felt my stomach drop. Fires dotted the valley floor, dozens of them. And moving between them, illuminated by the flickering light, were Lycans. Hundreds of them, just as the scout had reported. An army. Vardek's army. Where's the woman? I asked. The one claiming to be my sister? There. Torin had joined us, his sharp eyes fixed on a point near the largest fire. With Vardek himself. I squinted and gradually I could make out figures around that central fire. One stood out, a man even larger than Kyle, with white hair that caught the firelight. That had to be Vardek. And beside him, small and fragile-looking compared to the Lycans surrounding her, was a human woman. Even from this distance, even after 3 years, I recognized her. Emma. That's her, I whispered. That's my cousin. Kale's head whipped toward me. Your cousin, not your sister. We were raised together after my aunt died. Called each other sisters sometimes, but I shook my head. She disappeared 5 years ago. I thought she was dead. She's very much alive, Mira observed, and apparently working with our greatest enemy. Explain that. I couldn't. I had no explanation that made sense. Emma had always been troubled, always angry at the world for taking her mother. But this? Betraying not just me, but an entire civilization to a creature bent on war. We need to get closer, I said. I need to hear what she's telling them. Absolutely not. Kale grabbed my arm. That's exactly what Vardek wants. You walk down there, you're dead or captured within minutes. Then what do you suggest? We can't fight that many warriors. We came here for information, and the only way to get it is, I'll go. We all turned to stare at Mira.
I'm the best scout we have, she continued calmly. I can get close enough to hear without being detected. If this human is feeding Vardek information, I'll find out what. Kale hesitated, then nodded. Go. But Mira, if you're spotted, retreat immediately. We can't afford to lose you. Mira's smile was fierce. I don't plan on being spotted, my king. She shifted and disappeared into the darkness, her dark fur making her nearly invisible against the night. We waited.
Every minute felt like an hour. I sat on the cold ground, my eyes fixed on the valley below, watching the fires and trying to pick out Mira's form among the shadows. Kael paced beside me, restless and dangerous. She was your family, he said suddenly. This Emma. Did you love her? The question caught me off guard. Once. Before my parents died. Before she blamed me for everything wrong in her life and disappeared. And now? Now I don't know what I feel. Betrayed, certainly. Confused. I looked up at him. How could she do this? Work with creatures bent on destroying humanity? The same way any of us justify terrible things. His voice was bitter. We convince ourselves we're right, that our pain justifies our actions, that the end makes the means acceptable. There was a weight to his words that made me study him more closely. You're talking from experience. I've ruled for 3 centuries, Alara. You don't hold power that long without making choices that haunt you. Without crossing lines you swore you never would. He stopped pacing, his eyes distant. I've ordered executions, destroyed entire bloodlines that opposed me, sacrificed innocence when strategic necessity demanded it, all to maintain peace, to keep my people safe. That's different. Is it? Or is that what I tell myself to sleep at night? Before I could respond, Mira materialized from the darkness, shifting back to human form. Report, Kael said immediately. The woman is indeed feeding Vardek information, but not about our defenses. Mira's expression was troubled. She's telling him about you, Alara, everything about you, where you came from, how you lived, your weaknesses. Ice slid down my spine. Why would Vardek care about, because he's planning to use you? Mira interrupted. I heard him say it. He knows about the life debt, knows that harming you would destroy the Alpha's credibility with our people. He's planning an attack, not on our stronghold, but on you specifically. When? Kael's voice was deadly calm. Dawn. He plans to march on the stronghold under the pretense of negotiation, but his real target is her. He wants to kill her in front of the entire pack, prove that the Alpha can't protect what's his. The words settled over us like a death sentence. Then we leave, Torin said. Get the human back to safety before... No. My voice cut through the darkness. If we run, Vardek wins. He gets to tell everyone that the human fled, that I was a coward, that Kael's protection means nothing. Better alive and branded a coward than dead and proven right, Mira said bluntly. Except I won't be alive for long either way. I stood, my mind racing. Vardek wants to use me to destroy Kael's authority. If I run now, I do his work for him. The pack loses faith in their alpha. Vardek challenges him, and whether Kael wins or loses, your people are torn apart by civil war. So what do you propose? Kael asked quietly. I looked down at the valley, at the army gathered there, at Emma, who'd sold out everything for revenge or power or whatever broken reasoning had led her to this point. I propose we give Vardek what he wants. Me. But on our terms, not his. Absolutely not. Listen to me. I grabbed Kael's arm, forcing him to meet my eyes. Vardek is counting on you protecting me, on you refusing to let me anywhere near him. He thinks he knows how you'll react, so we do the opposite. We bring me to him, tomorrow, publicly, and I challenge Emma. Silence. Then Mira started laughing, a sharp, delighted sound. You want to challenge another human to single combat, in front of both armies? Yes. That's insane, Torin said. That's brilliant, Mira countered. Vardek can't refuse without looking weak. He's built his entire position on strength, on the idea that humans are prey, not equals. If a human challenges another human and he interferes, he proves the Alpha right, that humans can be strong, can be worthy of respect. Kale was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. You'd risk your life on this? I'm already risking my life. At least this way, I'm controlling the risk. I took a breath. And Emma owes me answers, owes me an explanation for why she betrayed me, betrayed our family name, betrayed everything we were raised to believe in. What if you lose? Then I lose. But at least I went down fighting. Isn't that what you told me matters to Lycans? Not winning, but refusing to surrender? A slow smile spread across Kale's face, proud and fierce and tinged with fear. You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most foolish. Can it be both? He pulled me into a sudden embrace, and for a moment I let myself lean into his warmth, his strength. If you die tomorrow, he said quietly, I will burn Vardek's entire army to ash. I will hunt him across every territory until there's nowhere left to run, and then I will make him suffer for what he took from me. I'm not planning on dying. Good, because I'm not planning on letting you. We made camp on the cliff edge, posting guards but making no attempt to hide our presence. We wanted Vardek to know we were here, wanted him to wonder what we were planning. I couldn't sleep. I lay wrapped in blankets near the fire, staring up at the stars and trying not to think about what morning would bring. Emma had always been stronger than me physically, faster, more aggressive. She'd won every childhood fight we'd had, and those had been play compared to what tomorrow would be. But I'd survived 3 years on the frontier alone. I'd saved a dying Lycan King. I'd competed in the spring trials and won against impossible odds. I was not the scared girl Emma remembered. You should rest, Kyle said, settling beside me. Can't. Too many thoughts. Want to share them? I considered, then decided honesty was easier than pretense. I'm terrified. Emma always beat me when we were kids. She's probably been training with Vardek's forces. She'll be ready for this. And you've been training with me, and you're fighting for something she isn't. What's that? Truth. Justice. The right to exist without apologizing for your compassion. He stared into the fire. Emma chose anger and revenge. You chose something harder. You chose to care, to save instead of destroy. That makes you stronger than she'll ever be. Pretty words, but strength doesn't win fights. No, but cleverness does, and you've proven you have that in abundance. He glanced at me. Use it tomorrow. Don't fight her battle. Fight yours. I thought about that, about the tactical scenarios, the obstacle course, the way I'd won not through strength, but through thinking differently than my opponents expected. Don't fight her battle. Fight yours. Thank you, I said softly. For what? For believing I can do this, even when I don't believe it myself. Kyle was quiet for a moment, proud. Then, when this is over, when you've proven yourself yet again to people who should have seen your worth from the beginning, what will you do? What do you mean? Will you stay? In my world? Or will you return to the human territories, to the life you had before? The question hung between us. I hadn't let myself think that far ahead, hadn't considered what came after survival. I don't know, I admitted. The life I had before doesn't exist anymore. Thornhaven, the tavern, that version of myself, it's all gone. But I don't know if I belong here either, in your world. You belong anywhere you choose to be. His voice was fierce. You've earned that right. Have I? Or have I just gotten lucky so far? Luck is what you make of the opportunities given to you, and you've made everything count. He turned to face me fully. Alara Quinn, you are the most remarkable person I've met in 347 years. Don't let anyone, human or Lycan, convince you otherwise. Before I could respond, he stood and walked away to check the perimeter. I lay there, his words echoing in my head, and finally, blessedly, sleep found me. Dawn came too fast and too bright. I woke to find the camp already stirring, warriors preparing for what was to come. Kyle was in conference with Mira and Torin, their voices low and urgent. I joined them, and the conversation stopped. We've sent word to Vardek, Kyle said without preamble. He's agreed to a meeting, neutral ground, both parties limited to 30 warriors each. And the challenge? We presented at the meeting, in front of both armies. His eyes held mine. Last chance to back out. No one would think less of you. I would think less of me. He nodded, like he'd expected that answer. Then let's go make history. We descended into the valley as the sun climbed the sky, our small force moving in tight formation. Across the clearing, Vardek's army was already assembled, a wall of predators, all of them watching our approach with hungry eyes. And in the center, flanked by guards, stood Vardek himself. He was massive, even by Lycan standards, easily 8 feet tall, with shoulders that could carry a tree trunk. His white hair fell past his shoulders, and his eyes were the color of old blood, dark red, inhuman, ancient. This was the creature who wanted to bring war to the world. He smiled as we approached, revealing teeth that were slightly too long to be human. "Kyle Draven," he said, his voice carrying across the clearing. "You received my message then." "I received your manipulation," Kyle replied coldly. "Using a human to spread lies about another human. How very human of you." Vardek's smile widened. "Lies? The girl has told me nothing but truth. Everything I need to know about your pet." "I am not his pet." The words were out before I could stop them. Every head turned toward me. Vardek's gaze fixed on me, and I felt the weight of his power like a physical thing. "And yet you stand behind him, protected by him, owned by him in all but name." "I stand beside him," I corrected, stepping forward to match Kael's position. "As one who holds a life debt, as one who has earned the right to be here through trial and blood." "Earned?" Vardek laughed. "You've earned nothing, little human. You're a symbol, a token, a pet he keeps to feel better about his weakness." "Then let me prove otherwise." I stepped forward again, away from Kael's protective presence. "I challenge Emma Quinn to single combat, human to human. No interference from either side. Winner takes all." Shocked silence. Then Vardek laughed harder. "You want to fight your own sister? How delicious! And what exactly do you think the winner takes?" "If I win, Emma tells the truth. The full truth. About why she's here, what she's told you, what she hopes to gain. And if she wins? Then you get what you wanted. Proof that the human under Kael's protection is weak, that his judgment is flawed, that his leadership has failed." Vardek considered this, his red eyes gleaming with malicious delight. "Agreed. But I add one condition. When your precious Emma defeats you, as she inevitably will, the Alpha must watch. Must see his failure. Must carry that knowledge for the rest of his days." "Elara, don't," Kael started. "Agreed," I said. Vardek gestured and the crowd parted. Emma stepped forward, and I got my first clear look at her in 3 years. She'd changed. The soft girl I remembered was gone, replaced by someone harder, leaner. Her hair was cropped short, her clothes were leather and steel, and her eyes held a coldness that made my heart ache. "Hello, cousin," she said. "Hello, Emma. I wish I could say I was surprised to find you here, playing savior again. It's what you do best, isn't it? Saving people who don't want to be saved, interfering where you don't belong. I saved a man who was dying. How is that interfering? You saved a monster." Her composure cracked, showing the rage beneath. "These creatures are predators, killers. They've been hiding in the shadows for centuries, and you helped their king survive to rule another day. Do you have any idea what you've done? I saved a life. The same thing you should have done when your mother was dying, instead of blaming me for being born." Emma's face went white, then red. "You don't get to talk about my mother. You don't get to... To what? Tell the truth? That you've spent 5 years festering in hatred because you couldn't accept that sometimes people die and it's no one's fault? That you've allied with creatures who want to destroy humanity just to get revenge on me?" "I allied with them to survive," Emma screamed. "I allied with them because after you and your perfect dead parents were done, there was nothing left for me. No home, no family, no future. So yes, when Vardek found me dying in the woods, just like you found your precious king, I made a choice. I chose strength over weakness, power over compassion, and it's kept me alive when your way would have killed me." The words hung in the air, and suddenly I understood. "Vardek saved you," I said quietly. "Just like I saved Kael, and now you owe him a life debt." Emma's expression confirmed it. "So this isn't about hatred," I continued. "It's about loyalty.
He owns you the same way you think Kael owns me. He doesn't own me. But her voice lacked conviction. He gave me purpose, showed me the truth about these creatures, about their power, their superiority, their willingness to use you as a weapon against your own kind. I took a step toward her. Emma, you're being manipulated. Vardek doesn't care about you any more than he cares about justice or truth. You're a tool to him, a means to an end.
And what are you to your king? She shot back. You think he protects you out of the goodness of his heart? You're useful to him, a symbol of his benevolence. But the moment you stop being useful, he would die before allowing harm to come to me, I said simply. Because that's what the life debt means. What real loyalty means, not ownership, not manipulation, partnership. Emma stared at me, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw uncertainty flicker in her eyes. Then Vardek spoke. Enough talking, fight, or concede that you're both too weak to matter. Emma's face hardened. Let's finish this. A circle was cleared. The two armies surrounded us, Lycans and humans alike, all watching to see which way this would go. Emma and I faced each other across 10 feet of dirt and dead grass. I don't want to hurt you, I said. Then you've already lost, she replied. She attacked. Emma had always been faster than me, and 3 years hadn't changed that. She closed the distance in a heartbeat, her fist aimed at my face. I ducked, let her momentum carry her past me, used her own speed against her. She stumbled, caught herself, spun back toward me. We circled each other, and I could see her reassessing. I wasn't the clumsy child she remembered. I'd grown, changed, survived. She feinted left, struck right. I blocked, but felt the impact shudder through my arm. She was stronger too. Vardek had trained her well, but he'd trained her to fight like a Lycan, all aggression, all power, overwhelming force. I'd been trained by Kyle to fight like a human, to use cleverness, to adapt, to survive. Don't fight her battle. Fight yours. I stopped trying to match her strength and started moving, stayed light on my feet, made her chase me, let her burn energy while I conserved mine. She grew frustrated, sloppy, started telegraphing her attacks. The opening came when she overcommitted to a strike. I sidestepped, grabbed her extended arm, and used her own weight to throw her to the ground. She hit hard, the air exploding from her lungs. I could have ended it there. Could have pinned her, forced her submission. Instead, I stepped back, gave her room to rise. Stay down, I said. Please, Emma, just stay down. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. Why? Why are you doing this? Because you're my family. Because even after everything, I don't want to hurt you. Because I believe there's still good in you, buried under all that anger. There's nothing good left. She pushed herself to her feet, swaying. He burned it all away. Then let me help you find it again. For a long moment, we just stood there. The armies around us were silent, waiting. Then Emma laughed, broken and bitter. You can't save everyone, Alara. You couldn't save your parents. You couldn't save my mother. And you can't save me. She charged again, wild and reckless, tears blurring her vision. I didn't want to do it, but I had no choice. I met her charge, deflected her attack, and struck precisely, carefully, at the nerve cluster in her neck that I'd learned about during tactical training. Emma dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Silence. Then Mira's voice, clear and carrying. The human Alara Quinn wins. The Lycan army erupted, not in anger, but in shocked approval. I'd done what Vardek said was impossible. I'd beaten another human in fair combat, using skill and training provided by their king. I'd proven that Kael's way worked. Vardek's expression was murderous. This proves nothing. One human defeating another. This proves everything, Kael said, stepping into the circle. It proves that humans can be taught, can be strong, can earn their place through merit rather than birth. You said this human was weak, Vardek. You said my judgment was flawed. Yet here she stands, victorious, while your pawn lies defeated. She's not my... She is. We all saw it, heard it. Kael's voice carried to every corner of the clearing. You found a broken human and twisted her hatred into a weapon, used her pain to strike at me. But she failed, just as you will fail. This isn't over, Draven. No, but the terms have changed. Kale moved to stand beside me, his presence a solid wall at my back. You wanted to prove humans were weak. Alara has proven otherwise. You wanted to destroy my credibility. She has strengthened it. Every move you make, we counter. Every weapon you forge, we blunt. How long before your own people start questioning whether you're leading them to victory or to ruin? Vardek's face contorted with rage. For a moment, I thought he might attack despite the treaty, despite the odds. Then he laughed, cold and cruel. Well played, Alpha, but this is just one battle. The war is far from over. He turned and strode back to his forces, calling out orders. Within minutes, they were withdrawing, melting back into the forest like shadows. I stood in the center of the clearing, Emma unconscious at my feet, and tried to process what had just happened. I'd won. I'd actually won. Kale's hand found my shoulder. Are you hurt? No, just tired. I looked down at Emma. What happens to her now? That's your decision. She's human. You defeated her. By Lycan law, you decide her fate. I knelt beside my cousin, brushing the hair back from her face. She looked so young, so lost. She comes with us, I said, back to the stronghold. She'll be treated as a guest, not a prisoner, and we'll try to undo whatever Vardek did to her. She tried to destroy you. She tried to destroy the idea of me. There's a difference. I stood, meeting Kael's eyes. She's broken, not evil. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that broken things can be repaired. If someone's willing to put in the work. Kael studied me for a long moment. Then he smiled, genuine and warm. You never stop surprising me, Alara Quinn. Good. Keeps life interesting. As our forces gathered to make the journey back, I looked around at the Lycans who'd witnessed the fight. Some were watching me with new respect, others with curiosity. A few still held suspicion, but even they couldn't deny what they'd seen. The weak human had won. The Alpha's judgment had been proven sound, and maybe, just maybe, there was hope for a future where humans and Lycans could coexist. Mira approached as we prepared to leave. That was well fought, she said grudgingly. You have more spine than I gave you credit for. Thanks, I think. Don't let it go to your head. You still have a long way to go before you're truly one of us. But she was smiling as she said it. One of us. The words settled into my chest, warm and terrifying. We started the long journey back to Ravencrest. Kael walked beside me, Emma slung over Torin's shoulder like a sack of grain. What you did today, Kael said quietly, will be remembered, talked about. You've changed the conversation, Alara. Proven that strength comes in many forms. I just did what needed to be done. Exactly. That's what makes you dangerous. He glanced at me. To my enemies, anyway. To me, it makes you invaluable. There was something in his voice, something more than gratitude or political alliance, something that made my heart beat faster. But before I could examine it too closely, we crested the ridge and saw Ravencrest spread out below us. Home. The word appeared in my mind unbidden, and I didn't try to dismiss it. Maybe I had found something worth staying for after all. The celebration that greeted our return to Ravencrest was unlike anything I'd ever witnessed. Hundreds of Lycans lined the pathways, their voices raised in a haunting harmony that was part howl, part song. They parted as we passed, and I caught their expressions, no longer hostile or dismissive, but respectful. Some even bowed their heads as I walked by. It was overwhelming, terrifying, and strangely humbling. They're honoring you, Kael murmured beside me. The victory song. It's reserved for warriors who've proven themselves in battle. I'm not a warrior. Tell that to them. We reached the Great Hall, and the celebration continued inside. Food appeared, roasted meat, fresh bread, winter vegetables stored in the deep cellars. Mead flowed freely, and the Lycans who'd been so suspicious of me just days ago now raised their cups in my direction. I sat at the high table beside Kael, acutely aware that Emma was being tended to in the healer's quarters below. She'd woken during the journey back, silent and withdrawn, refusing to meet my eyes. That was a problem for tomorrow. Tonight, apparently, was for celebration. You should say something, Rhea said from across the table. The black-haired counselor who'd questioned my presence now watched me with something approaching approval. They're waiting to hear from you.
I don't know what to say. The truth usually works. I looked at Kael, who nodded encouragement.
Taking a shaky breath, I stood. The hall gradually fell silent, hundreds of golden eyes turning toward me. I'm not good at speeches, I began, and a few chuckles rippled through the crowd. I'm just a human who made a choice in the forest one night. A stupid, reckless choice to help someone who needed it. I didn't know it would lead here. Didn't know that one act of compassion would change my entire life. I paused, gathering my thoughts. But I'm grateful it did. Because coming here, facing your trials, fighting for the right to stand among you, it's shown me something important. Strength isn't just about power or dominance. It's about choosing to do what's right even when it terrifies you. It's about protecting those who can't protect themselves. It's about building bridges instead of walls. The hall was completely silent now. I know some of you still don't trust me, still think I'm a weakness your alpha should eliminate, and that's okay. Trust is earned, not given. But I promise you this, I will keep earning it, every day, for as long as you'll let me stay. I sat down abruptly, my heart hammering. For a moment, nothing happened. Then someone started the victory song again, and the entire hall joined in. The sound was deafening, beautiful, and utterly surreal. Kael's hand found mine under the table, his fingers intertwining with mine. Well said, he murmured. I was terrified. I know. That's what made it powerful. The celebration continued late into the night. I lost track of how many Lycans approached to offer their respect, their thanks, their grudging acceptance. By the time the hall finally began to empty, I was exhausted. Kael walked me back to my quarters, the stronghold quiet around us. You should rest, he said at my door. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges. Emma. Among other things. He hesitated, then added, the council wants to meet with you, formally. They have questions about what happened with Vardek, and about your place here moving forward. My place? I studied his face. What does that mean? It means things have changed, Alara. You're no longer just a human under my protection. You're someone who's proven themselves, someone who deserves a voice in how we move forward. He stepped closer. The question is whether you want that voice, whether you want to stay and be part of building something new, or return to the human world now that you've proven your point. The question I'd been avoiding since the valley. I don't know, I admitted. This world, your world, it's not what I expected. It's harsher, more violent, more complicated, but it's also more honest, more direct. People say what they mean here. They don't hide behind false pleasantries. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm still deciding. I looked up at him, this ancient king who'd become something more than an obligation. What do you want me to do? His eyes held mine, and I saw the struggle there. The war between duty and desire, between what was strategic and what was personal. I want you to choose freely, he said finally, without obligation, without debt, without pressure. I want you to decide what Alara Quinn wants, and then I want to support that choice, even if it means watching you walk away. The honesty in his voice made my chest ache. And if I chose to stay, what would that mean? It would mean accepting the bond fully, becoming part of this world completely. It would mean danger, responsibility, constant challenges from those who oppose change. He paused. It would mean being mine and me being yours, in a way that transcends politics or duty. My breath caught. Kael, think about it, he interrupted gently. Take the time you need. No one is rushing you. He left before I could respond, disappearing into the shadows of the corridor. I stood alone at my door, his words echoing in my mind, and wondered when exactly I'd fallen in love with the creature who shouldn't exist. Morning brought the promised council meeting. I dressed carefully, choosing the clothes that had been provided for me. Sturdy but well-made, practical but respectable. The outfit of someone who belonged, not a charity case or a prisoner. The council chamber felt different this time, less hostile. The 7 counselors sat in their semicircle, but now they watched me with curiosity rather than contempt. Except Draven. He still looked like he wanted me dead. Alara Quinn, Rhea began formally, you stand before this council having proven yourself in combat and in character. We have questions about the events at the western border.
I'll answer what I can. The woman, Emma Quinn. What is her connection to Vardek? I explained what Emma had revealed, how Vardek had found her dying, saved her, created a life debt that he'd twisted into loyalty and manipulation. So she's bound to him the same way you're bound to our Alpha, Draven said. It wasn't a question. No, the bonds are fundamentally different. Kael has never manipulated me, never used the debt to force my actions. Vardek weaponized Emma's gratitude, turned it into something ugly. How convenient that you draw that distinction. It's not convenient, it's the truth. I met his hostile gaze directly. If you don't believe me, talk to Emma yourself. She's coherent now. Ask her who chose her path and who had it chosen for them. We intend to, Rhea said. But that brings us to our next question. What do you propose we do with her? Give her a chance. The same chance you gave me. Let her prove she can be more than Vardek made her. She's a traitor, Draven spat. She fed our enemy information, helped plan attacks against our people. She's a victim, I countered, broken and manipulated by someone who saw her pain and used it. Yes, she made terrible choices, but she made them from a place of desperation, not malice. There's a difference. And if she betrays us again, then I'll deal with her myself. She's my responsibility. The council exchanged glances. Finally, Kael spoke from his position at the center. The council will take Alara's recommendation under advisement, but there's another matter that requires discussion. He looked directly at me. Your status within our society. Here it was, the moment of truth. You've proven yourself worthy of respect, Kael continued. You've demonstrated strength, courage, tactical brilliance, and compassion, qualities we value in our people. The question before this council is whether to offer you a formal position within our hierarchy. My heart began to race. What kind of position? I asked carefully. Rhea answered. An advisor to the Alpha, someone who bridges the gap between human and Lycan perspectives, who can help us navigate the changing relationship between our peoples. You want me to be a diplomat? We want you to be a voice of reason, she corrected, someone who's seen both worlds and can help us build a better future. It was more than I'd ever expected, more than I'd ever dared to hope for. But there was a catch. There was always a catch. What's the requirement? I asked. What would I have to give up? Your human life, Draven said bluntly. You couldn't return to human settlements, couldn't maintain ties to that world. You would be one of us, for better or worse. And the life debt? Would be fulfilled, Kael said quietly. By accepting a position within our society, by choosing to stay of your own free will, the debt would be considered paid. You would be free to leave at any time. Free. The word hung in the air, tantalizing and terrifying. 3 years ago, I'd lost everything, my parents, my home, my sense of purpose. I'd survived through sheer stubbornness and the refusal to give up. Now I was being offered something I'd never had even before the losses. A real place, a real purpose, a real future. All I had to do was accept it. Can I think about it? I asked. Of course, Kael said. Take whatever time you need. The council dismissed me, and I walked out into the bright morning, my mind spinning. I found Emma in the healer's quarters, sitting by the window and staring out at nothing. She looked up when I entered, and I saw the haunted look in her eyes. Come to gloat? She asked bitterly. Come to talk. I pulled up a chair. How are you feeling? Like my entire life is a lie. Like everything I believed was manipulation. Like I'm exactly as pathetic as you always thought I was. I never thought you were pathetic, Emma. Angry, yes. Hurting, definitely, but never pathetic. She laughed hollowly. You should have. I fell for every lie Vardek fed me. Believed him when he said Lycans were superior, that humans were weak, that you were a traitor for helping their king. I let him twist me into a weapon. He's good at manipulation. It's not your fault. It is my fault. She turned to face me, tears streaming down her face. I chose this, Alara. I chose hatred over healing, revenge over recovery. I chose to hurt you because it was easier than facing my own pain. That's on me, no one else. I was quiet for a moment, letting her words settle. You're right, I said finally. You did choose this. You chose the easy path, the one that let you blame everyone else for your suffering. But Emma, you can choose differently now. You can choose to heal, to change, to become someone better than who Vardek made you. Why would you give me that chance after everything I did? Because someone gave me a chance when I didn't deserve it, and it changed everything.
Emma stared at me, and slowly, understanding dawned in her eyes. Kyle. He could have left me to die when his people turned against me. Could have abandoned me when the council questioned my presence. Instead, he protected me, trained me, gave me the tools to prove myself. I leaned forward. Now I'm giving you the same choice. Stay here, work with the healers, learn what it really means to be strong. Or leave, go back to the human world, and hope Vardek doesn't find you again.
That's not much of a choice. It's the only one you've got. She turned back to the window, silent for a long time. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. Be better, be different. I've been angry for so long, I don't remember how to be anything else. Then learn. I did. You were never as broken as me. No, I was broken differently, but broken is broken, Emma. What matters is whether you're willing to put in the work to heal. She didn't answer, but she didn't send me away either. I left her there, hoping I'd planted a seed that might eventually grow.
That evening I walked the stronghold alone, trying to sort through my thoughts. The offer from the council. Kael's confession. Emma's brokenness. My own uncertain future. It was too much to process. I found myself at the training grounds, empty now in the fading light. This was where I'd pushed myself to the breaking point, where I'd learned that strength came in many forms. Thought I might find you here. I turned to find Mira approaching, her silver eyes gleaming in the twilight. Needed to think, I said. About the council's offer? Among other things. She moved to stand beside me, both of us looking out over the empty arena. For what it's worth, I think you should accept. I glanced at her in surprise. You do? You've been skeptical of me from the beginning. I have, because I've seen what happens when the alpha makes emotional decisions instead of strategic ones, seen the consequences of putting personal feelings above the good of the pack. She paused. But you've proven you're different, that you think about more than just yourself, that you're willing to sacrifice for the greater good. I'm not that noble. No one is, but you try, and sometimes trying is enough. She looked at me directly. The pack needs someone like you, someone who sees possibilities instead of just threats, someone who bridges worlds instead of burning them. That's a lot of pressure. Welcome to leadership. I laughed despite myself. Is it always this complicated? Usually more so, Mira smiled. But it's also rewarding, knowing you're building something that matters, something that will outlast you. What if I'm not strong enough? You defeated a trained opponent in single combat. You survived the spring trials. You stood up to the council when they wanted you gone. Her expression was serious now. Alara, you're one of the strongest people I've ever met. You just don't see it yet. The words hit deeper than I expected. Thank you, I said quietly. Don't thank me. Just make the right choice, whatever that is. She left me alone again, but her words stayed with me. I found Kyle in his private quarters, a room I'd never entered before. It was surprisingly simple. A bed, a desk covered in maps and reports, shelves lined with books that looked ancient. He looked up when I entered, surprise flickering across his face. Alara, is everything all right? I have my answer, about the council's offer. He set down the report he'd been reading, giving me his full attention. And? I accept, on one condition. Name it. That we do this as partners. Not as alpha and advisor, but as equals building something new together. I took a breath. That we stop pretending this is just about politics or duty and admit what this really is. Kael stood slowly, moving around the desk to stand before me. And what is this, Alara? You know what it is. I can see it in your eyes every time you look at me. The same thing I feel when I look at you. Say it. I love you. The words came out stronger than I expected. I love you and I think you love me, and I'm tired of pretending we're just bound by some mystical life debt, when the truth is so much simpler and so much more complicated than that. For a long moment, Kael just stared at me. Then he closed the distance between us and kissed me. It was nothing like I expected, fierce and gentle simultaneously, desperate and patient,
like he'd been holding back for weeks and couldn't hold back anymore.
His hands cupped my face like I was something precious, something worth protecting. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard.
"I do love you," he said hoarsely.
"I have since the moment I woke up in your cabin and saw you had given up everything to save a stranger. I've spent weeks trying to convince myself it was gratitude or the bond or political necessity. But it's none of those things. What is it then? It's you, your courage, your compassion, your absolutely infuriating refusal to back down even when you're terrified." He smiled. "You make me want to be better, to build a world worthy of someone like you. I'm not that special. You are to me." He kissed me again, softer this time. "So yes, partners, equals, building something new together. Even though I'm human and you're a 300-year-old Lycan King, especially because of that, we represent what's possible when two worlds meet with open hearts instead of closed fists." I laughed and he pulled me close, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt completely safe. Completely home. Well, the formal ceremony happened 3 days later. The entire stronghold gathered in the amphitheater, thousands of Lycans filling every available space. I stood at the center beside Kael, wearing formal attire that had been crafted specifically for this occasion, a blend of human and Lycan styles, representing the bridge I was meant to be. Rhea stepped forward, her voice carrying across the crowd. "We gather to witness a new chapter in our history. For the first time, a human will be formally accepted into our society, not as prey, not as property, but as an equal, as an advisor to the Alpha, as a bridge between our worlds." She turned to me. "Alara Quinn, do you accept this position, knowing the responsibilities it entails? Knowing that you will face opposition, danger, and challenges that would break most people?" "I do." "Do you swear to serve the interests of both human and Lycan peoples, to seek peace over war, understanding over hatred, cooperation over domination?" "I swear it." "Then by the authority vested in this council, I name you advisor to the Alpha, bridge between worlds, and friend to all who seek a better future." The crowd erupted, not in unanimous approval, but in acknowledgement. I could see faces that were still skeptical, still hostile, but I could also see respect, acceptance, hope. It was more than enough. Kael took my hand, lifting it high. "Let it be known across all territories. This human is under my protection and my partnership. Anyone who harms her answers to me. Anyone who respects her honors me. We stand together, now and always." The victory song rose again, filling the amphitheater with its haunting harmony. And I stood beside the Lycan King, no longer a frightened tavern worker, no longer a charity case or a political symbol. I was Alara Quinn, advisor, bridge builder, survivor, and I had found where I belonged. 6 months later, I stood at the same western border where I'd fought Emma, but the scene was vastly different. Instead of armies facing each other across no man's land, there were tables, chairs, Lycans and humans sitting together, negotiating trade agreements, discussing border protocols, building the framework for a new relationship. It was slow work, frustrating work. There were setbacks and arguments and moments when it seemed like the whole thing would collapse. But it was working. Kael stood beside me, watching the proceedings with satisfaction. "You did this," he said quietly. 6 months ago, this would have been impossible. Now look at them." "We did this," I corrected. "I couldn't have built any of this without your support. And I couldn't have imagined it without your vision." Emma approached from where she'd been helping coordinate the human delegation. She'd spent the past months working with the healers, dealing with the trauma Vardek had inflicted, learning to be something other than angry. She wasn't healed, probably never would be completely. But she was trying, and that was enough. "The Human Council wants to meet with you," she told me. "They have questions about the next phase of integration." "Tell them I'll be there shortly." Emma nodded and headed back, moving with a confidence she hadn't had when she arrived. "She's doing better," Kael observed. "She is. Still has bad days, but the good ones are starting to outnumber them." "Thanks to you. Thanks to people who were willing to give her a chance, same as they gave me." A commotion at the edge of the gathering caught our attention.
A Lycan scout was running toward us, urgent and worried. "My king, we've received word from the Northern Territories. Vardek has been spotted near the human settlement of Milford. He's planning an attack," I finished, trying to prove that humans and Lycans can't coexist peacefully. "What do we do?" the scout asked. I looked at Kael, and we shared a smile. "We stop him," I said simply, "together." Because that was what we did now. What we would keep doing for as long as it took. Building bridges. Protecting both worlds, proving that compassion and strength weren't opposites, but two sides of the same coin. It wouldn't be easy. Vardek was still out there, still plotting. There were humans who feared Lycans and Lycans who hated humans. There would be setbacks, betrayals, moments of doubt. But we had something Vardek didn't. We had hope, and we had each other. That night, after the crisis had been averted and Vardek had once again retreated into the shadows, I stood on the balcony of our shared quarters, looking out over Ravencrest. The stronghold was lit with hundreds of fires, smoke rising into the star-filled sky. It was beautiful, wild, home. Kael emerged from inside, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "Tired?" he asked. "Exhausted. But the good kind. There's a good kind of exhausted? The kind that comes from building something worth building, from fighting for something worth fighting for." He rested his chin on top of my head. "I never thought I'd see this. A future where humans and Lycans work together, where we're stronger united than divided. You didn't see it because you'd spent 3 centuries learning that survival meant isolation. But you were willing to change, to try something different, because you showed me it was possible." I turned in his arms to face him. "We showed each other. That's how this works." He kissed me softly. "I love you, Elara Quinn." "I love you too, Kael Draven. Even though I'm a monster from nightmare stories? Even though. Or maybe because of it." I smiled. "After all, Beauty and the Beast stories usually end well. This isn't a story. No, it's better. It's real." We stood together under the stars, and I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the dying stranger in the forest. The choice to help when helping made no sense. The trials, the challenges, the moments when I'd been certain I wouldn't survive. And now here I was, alive, strong, loved, not because I'd been perfect, but because I'd been willing to try. To choose compassion when the world demanded cruelty, to build bridges when others burned them. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more fights with Vardek, more opposition from those who feared change, more moments of doubt and fear. But I wasn't alone anymore. I had Kael. I had Emma, healing slowly but surely. I had Mira and Rhea, and even grudging Draven, who'd begun to respect what we were building even if he didn't fully approve. I had a home, a purpose, a future. "What are you thinking about?" Kael asked softly. "How far I've come. From a tavern worker with nothing, to this, to us. Do you regret it? The choice you made that night in the forest?" I thought about it, really thought about it. About everything I'd lost and everything I'd gained. "No," I said finally. "I don't regret it, not for a single moment, because that choice led me here, to you, to this life, to becoming someone I never imagined I could be." "And who is that?" I smiled. "Someone strong, someone who matters, someone who proved that compassion isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing you can choose." Kael pulled me close, and we stood together looking out over the valley, over the future we were building one difficult choice at a time. The stories would say I saved a king and became a queen, but the truth was simpler and more profound. I chose kindness when it cost me everything, and that choice saved us both.